Yo, Longhairs. Welcome to episode 121 of Let It Ride. Here we talk long hair and business, advocate for hair equality, and celebrate men's long manes with hair whips and high fives. If you're a guy with long hair,
you're in the right place.
I'm El Rubio here at the warehouse and global headquarters with my business partner and co-founder of the Longhairs, El Moreno. And we are stoked you are with us today for a supercharged episode of the Longhairs podcast. Our guest on this episode is a decorated international superstar hair guy and also an accomplished retired professional rugby union player. A three-time collegiate All-American at the University of Nevada, Reno. He made his international debut at the age of 20, soon after appearing in his first Rugby World Cup in 2007. In 2009, he was the first American player to ever play in the Super 14, in which he scored the first ever try for an American. He's competed in the Rugby World Cup, Top League, English Premiership, Pacific Rugby Premiership, and the International Rugby Sevens. And you can find his foldout in ESPN the magazine's 2015 edition of The Body Issue. A lifelong competitor and community builder, he established the Todd Clever Foundation with a mission to uplift and unite the rugby community through the core values of passion, teamwork, enjoyment, respect, and sportsmanship. Standing at 6 feet, 4 inches, 228 pounds, with 14 inches of wavy, rich, mahogany brown locks. He was the 2008 USA Rugby Men's Player of the Year and the 2000 to 2009 North American Player of the Decade. The former longtime captain of the United States national team. He's the most capped player in United States rugby history. He is live and in color and ready to pack a serious wallop on Let It Ride. He is Todd Clever!
I just feel like I should just rip this off. That got me juiced. That's a great intro. Jeez.
Nailed all the facts?
Yeah, nailed it.
Fact check?
That and some.
Hey, you make it easy when you're a badass. There's all the online content you could dive into.
Yeah, and some that you don't want to dive into. So.
Don't want to dive too deep.
That's correct.
Be careful what you find there. We saw you at the U.S. Open. You a big golf guy?
I'm a fan. I've been around golf my whole life. Born in Palm Springs. Have a couple places out there on the golf course. So, anytime hitting the links and
nice.
But more casually. But last few years I've picked it up a little bit more. My wife, actually, she's from Switzerland. And she came over to America on a golf and theater scholarship.
No way.
She's got me involved and she whips me pretty good up and down the course. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Why aren't we doing this on the 19th hole?
Yeah, exactly.
We got to get one lined up around here pretty soon.
I got the clubs in the car.
Dude, there's always room for the clubs.
always.
No matter what.
The baby seat can't fit. But
sorry, kids, you got to really tuck into the back there. We got to have the golf clubs. So we saw you at the U.S. Open a little over a year ago. We've been trying to link this up for a while, schedules permitting. Here we are. We'll get into some rugby talk, but let's get into what everyone wants to hear about. Tell us about the hair, man. How long have you had it? What is your hair story? What brought you to this point?
Well, I mean, you have to rewind it quite a bit. My parents were pretty conservative and wanted my brother and I to be always clean cut. So I remember dragging my feet, getting pulled into hairdressers, super cuts or super whatever it is, and leaving in tears with a sucker in my mouth. Like, come on, this sucks. I was like, when I get old, I'm never gonna cut my hair. Watch me, Mom. She's like, well, you can't. You got to go to college. You got to look presentable. And look at me now, Mom.
Yeah,
I'm doing things. So I mean, I've always wanted to, to beat my own drum and kind of be my own person and express myself, and kind of done it that way.
So was it once you were out of the house?
A little bit when I got strong enough to fight off my parents. They kind of let me have my say on how I want to be.
I had a hard time finding a picture of you with short hair.
Yeah.
I mean, everything you've had the flow for most of your rugby career, if not all of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny story with one of the old USA coaches. I had dreadlocks for a long period of my time. You know, I was at university, and I was 19, 20, having dreadlocks and playing good rugby at university, and made the national team. And the coach at the time, you know, he told me, he's like, you know, you want to play, you got to cut your hair, sort of thing, in so many words.
Yeah.
You know, every day it's like, hey, coach, he's like, oh, there's a barber around the corner. There's this. So I've had teachers in high school give me money to go get haircuts. I've had coaches bribe me to get playing time to get a haircut, and you know, it's just kind of how it is.
So how did you maintain the long hair out there with such physical contact, a lot of grabbing, you know, everything in the rugby, you know, game? How did you keep it without getting ripped out?
It did get tugged on a few times, and you know, he just kind of, you know, goes with the territory. You know, you don't complain. You kind of just retaliate back as fair and as legal as possible. But but sometimes, you know, people got a good tug on it.
It's just part of looking sick.
You know, it's just, you know, it's
they
part
call it
of
the pitch in rugby. Like what's the field called?
Oh yeah, pitch. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's right.
Okay, dude. Awesome.
So you resisted through the coaches and the teacher, or did you go and get it cut from time to time?
Yeah, I think the last time when I cut it, it was I did cut it, you know, leading into 2003. So
last time.
Well, I mean, that was the painful one that you know, had dreads, and I remember cutting dread by dread, tear by tear, just like, you know, come up to the practice the next day, the coach doesn't even acknowledge me cutting my own hair.
Oh my
like
gosh!
He's like, I get to work, but I played the next game, you know, and I got my first cap that way, so it was interesting.
So once you got to a point where you were a really good player, did you build up enough kind of rapport to where you just didn't get those comments anymore after a while?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you know, you kind of have to prove your worth, and I guess coming in as a, you know, teenager and 20-year-old as a member of the national team, you have to show your worth. So I mean, I think exact opposite. I think you just stay true to who you are and prove yourself. It doesn't matter, you know, what you look like or what your background is. So that's kind of what
let the work do the talking.
Exactly, 100%. I mean, I was undersized for my position by all the coaches that told me, or strength and conditioning coaches told me, like, you need to be this heavy, you need to be this strong. Yeah. And I just go back to them and look at the film and I ask them how heavy did I play? Yeah. You know, let my stats and let everything else prove to me. Yeah. Don't just say, like, you have to be this weight when you jump on a scale.
Okay. Dang, saying you're small. I mean, you're a big man. but I'm sure there's some giants out there.
There's some big boys on the field, on the pitch.
Yeah, on the pitch.
I said 228. I think maybe that was your playing weight. What are you walking around at now?
I'd be at 220 now. And you know, my playing weight varied quite a bit because I played both 7s and 15s for USA. So whenever I played 7s, I was around like 225, 228, and then I was about 10, 15 pounds heavier when I was with the 15s program.
Is that because there's fewer men on the pitch?
You got to be more.
You got to cover
fast,
more ground.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is that like those two styles of play? I guess is that the best way to say it? Is one more speed focused versus, you know, what's with more
physical
guys, but
exactly. Okay. So I mean, 7s and 15s, it's what it is. So 7 versus 7 and 15 versus 15. Yeah. So the 7 versus 7, it's only 7-minute halves. Okay. So it's a complete sprint. So you're covering so much ground in that small amount of time. Yeah. And you play like 3 games a day. So it's really tough on the body. Yeah. And you can't carry that weight, you know, into those tournaments. With 15s, it's a lot more physical. So, you know, it's 80-minute games, 40-minute halves. So, so you need more padding on the body with the shoulders and the neck and everything else because the contact area is so much more.
Okay.
Does 7s bring a bigger crowd or 15s? Or I know 7s brings a huge crowd, right?
It's a complete different sports. So 7s is in the Olympics now. So that's exciting. They have World Cups for 7s and 15s, and for 15s, it's just has World Cups. It's not longer in the Olympics. It was in 1924 was the last time, and USA won the gold, but then they took it out. So there's a long history of it, but for crowd wise, 7s is more of a festival feel. Because, you're playing every 15 minutes is a new game. 7 minutes halftime, 7 minutes full game, new team on. And the greatest thing about rugby, I think, is just the inclusion and the diversity of the sport. Because you have everybody from different backgrounds, sizes, shapes, countries, and females and males. They play same exact rules, same exact everything, field. So it's not like any other.
Yeah. Can we take let's go just rewind a little bit. How did you even get into rugby? Coming from California guy, Palm Springs, football's the sport out here. You're built pretty well to play football as well. Maybe even basketball too. But so why rugby?
Yeah. Born in Palm Springs, grew up in San Jose, California. And I just followed my brother's footsteps, as a kid. Look up at your brother. And, I kind of saw his pathways of what he did, and I just kind of copied, or just knowing I wouldn't want to do that. And in high school he played American football and rugby, and I played soccer a bit growing up, and I like skateboarding, I like surfing, snowboarding, all that. So I was kind of a little bit different on that. And whenever he was playing American football, you have your double days, you have your military style coaching, how that goes about. And for me, as a long hair, it doesn't really chime in too well. So I saw him start rugby, and we practices Tuesdays and Thursdays and have one game on the weekend, and after the game they get together with the other team, and it was this really cool culture that I really enjoyed. And then every year the team went on tour, so they went to Ireland, they went to Canada, they went to South Africa, and I'm just sitting here like, man, he's come back before, with pictures and stories and all these things. I'm like, why would I want to play football? Double days, tackle, only get to play offense or defense. I was like, that sport's not for me. So I got into rugby because I wanted to see the world. Awesome. And and the better I got at rugby, I was able to see more places. And then after playing rugby for a couple years, I got introduced to professional rugby. And then there's, national teams and World Cups and things that I didn't know that were there when I first started playing. And then kind of I was like, all right, it's time to set some goals. And, once I saw, a stadium full of, 90,000 fans and fans, I was like, I want to be down there and put all eggs in one basket, and made that dream come true.
Dude, outstanding.
As you were saying, rugby is a global sport. Just take us for a minute outside the mind of Americans when it comes to sports and rugby in particular.
Yeah, I mean, it's on all corners of the world. And, the Rugby World Cup is the third largest sporting event in the world, behind the Summer Olympics and the FIFA Soccer World Cup. Yeah. So, I mean, it's massive, from broadcasting to attendance to, professional leagues. And there's professional leagues everywhere. And, through my career, I was lucky enough to experience contracts in New Zealand, South Africa, Japan, England, and then the States. So it was fun. And then those are all places where I lived and was a resident. And then I traveled to, 37 countries playing the sport. Yeah. So it's really fun, to some of the most random places and some of the most coolest places that you would never think of visiting. And that was a quite cool experience.
Having so much international experience, this is just something I was wondering, when you're competing out there and there is a language barrier, in many sports, there's a little banter back and forth, or you're speaking to one another or whatever communication. It's different with the language barrier, but there's still plenty of, body language. Just how is it with the difference on the international stage?
Yeah, I mean, I think once you're in sport, you know, there's language barriers whenever you're, you know, having a beer with somebody, or if you're doing business, or if you're trying to, you know, order food. But whenever you're in sport, you kind of have that same sort of language.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's hiccups. You know, my first overseas experience was in New Zealand, which they speak English, no problem. After a couple of years there, I went to South Africa. I spent 3 seasons there, and it was Afrikaans. You know, so, you know, most of my teammates were, so all my calls were in Afrikaans, all my, you know, teams and friends, and, you know, off field as well, you know, spoke Afrikaans. They spoke English as well, but it was a change, and, you know, and so you learn how to count, you learn, you know, the calls, you learn the bad words, you know, first, but as an experience, and I always took that as, you know, what a valuable thing, and didn't want it to pass by, and wanted to respect their culture and learn as much as I could. And then I spent 5 years in Japan. So, you know, how to translate it for the first couple of years, but at the end of my 5 years, I was, you know, reading and writing, and, you know, getting around town, and having a lot of fun with it.
That's awesome.
And what a culture it was. So it was, there's always going to be barriers, and there's always going to be hiccups. It's about kind of how are you going to overcome that. And I mean, you know, being here, you know, it's a melting pot here in America.
Yeah.
If somebody's trying to, you know, respect our culture and be a good person, doesn't matter where they come from, if it's, you know, Iran, or if it's Africa, or if it's Ukraine, Russia, it doesn't matter. You know, you see what people are for. So that's the main part. And I think being like a global citizen, that really, you know, shines through.
Dude, phenomenal. Man, what a great, like, just blessing that sport has given you such a rich life of culture, and seeing and experiencing so many different places and people and things. Out of all the areas you played or teams, or like, who's the toughest? Like, you know, which country? Because like immediately it comes to my head is just New Zealand, the All Blacks, and
right?
like they kind of have the stigma, right? But is that true, or what's it really like out there?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I went to New Zealand, is because whenever, you know, and I was, you know, kind of a big fish in a small pond playing rugby in America, you know, coming up at age 18, 19 at university, and already excelling, and, you know, making college All-Americans, and getting a cap for USA, and seeing what the difference was. And it wasn't, you know, physically, it was more just like skill-wise and hardness, and being in every day. And rugby in New Zealand is a religion. Yeah. So I just wanted to immerse myself and challenge myself with the world's best. So I went down there and tested my time, and, you know, nothing was guaranteed when I went down there. I just had an opportunity to try out for a contract, and it came off pretty well, and I ended up staying a couple of years, which was great. Nice. But to go back to your initial question of like who's the hardest, in hardest leagues, it goes back to when I first started playing as well, is when I started watching rugby, which is not, you know, you don't turn on TV and like, oh, here's rugby. You know, you have to fall upon it, or you have to like search out, or go to an Irish pub and watch it. But I used to watch, you know, tapes with my older brother, like VHS, or like one channel on the TV on early Sunday mornings or Saturday mornings, and we got Tri Nations, which was Australia, South Africa, and New Zealand, and they played the nations, and Super Rugby. And Super Rugby consists of teams from Australia, South Africa, and New Zealand. So that's how I got introduced to it. So I got my favorite players, and I got my favorite team, and I understood that. And I didn't really know about European rugby. I didn't know around anything else other than that. So whenever I started making these goals, I was like, that's where I want to play. You know, that suits my style. Open field, hard nose, you know, kind of, you know, that grit, but also with a lot of flair. So I wanted that's why all my eggs were in one basket, to go to Southern Hemisphere. And when I had opportunities to finally sign contracts, it was in France, it was in England, it was in Italy. I'm like, no, I'm happy staying, you know, Southern Hemisphere. So that's why I stayed in New Zealand and ultimately moved to South Africa. Okay.
Christmas in the dead of summer.
Yeah, that's right. You know, you don't really think about that, you know, and then you hear these holidays, you know, dreaming of a white Christmas. Like, I bet you are dreaming of a white Christmas.
So you were also a pioneer among American rugby players. These guys in these leagues have been going for hundreds of years, and Americans are kind of the newcomers, and you're kind of one of the first Americans with the skill and the ability and the desire to play and to be there. Did you get any, were people welcoming to an American to the rugby, international rugby stage?
Yeah, I mean, no.
I can see like I'm gonna break this guy off.
No, exactly. I mean, you get it from everything. But I also got a lot of haters from America. Just going over there. Oh, he's not gonna last, or he won't make the team. I remember starting against one of my idols, someone that I looked up to, and I got to play against him. Someone that I molded my game around, be like, this is how I want to play with a combination of that. And I got to play against people, and I played my best rugby. But I remember, and that was when I was young. I was reading the comments. I don't read them anymore, thankfully. So, but yeah, I'm like, man, fuck these guys. Talking shit, doubting me. Like they don't want to know. But it gave me put the fire into my ass to really dive in. And then I remember, being in South Africa when I signed the Super Rugby contract, which is huge for myself and my family and rugby in America, because it was the first. I remember being on the front page of the sports section in Afrikaans newspaper, and I had to get someone translate it, and there's a picture of me in the training thing, just kind of like smiling face, I was like looking pretty dumb, but I was pretty stoked. And it was the title was, "Would China import rice? Why would we import a flanker?" Which was my position. So I'm just sitting here like, that's the only thing that's in English. The rest of it is like, I'm like, oh boy, this is fucked up.
I gotta get this article translated.
So it was. So that's and that's how newspapers is, and you kind of go that way. And I was a long-haired California kid, so I had all these like Afrikaans farmers being like, what is this guy doing? And then after a couple of seasons, had some really good rugby and played this, so won them over. But then you started seeing these kids, like little kids starting to get long hair.
Nice.
So the parents are just like, they hate me, but they like me. They hate me, they like me. They're like, but it was quite cool. It was a cool movement.
Dude,
cool
won them over with your play. That's awesome.
And that was the media, and that's the media that you shouldn't really care too much about.
Right.
But I also had to win over my teammates.
Yeah.
Because I came in there and I took a position that someone that they knew before, or someone that's been trying for a long time.
Right.
So it wasn't when I came in and everybody in the locker room, oh hey Todd, American, talk to me.
Yeah.
And no, I was like, there's a couple guys that way, but the rest of it was like, you had to earn their respect.
Yeah.
And the only way through that is being a hard motherfucker and tackling hard, running hard, supporting them, and being a great teammate. So you definitely do that. So by the time we finished the off season workout, the preseason workouts, and getting into it, I definitely went over the locker room well before the fans and the media.
Yeah. Dang. That's awesome. That's some pretty big adversity,
dude. Massive.
To take on. Yeah.
It's good to have your back against the ropes and a big mountain ahead of you, and I know a lot of players in any sport that have their whole career in one club, so they only know one locker room, or they only know one city and everything else. And I was on a podcast actually not too long ago, and we were talking about it, and something really clicked on me is all the places I lived. When I lived in New Zealand for 2 years, when I lived in South Africa for the few seasons, when I lived in Japan for 5 years, and when I was in England for the seasons, I didn't hang one thing on a wall. I never hung artwork. I never hung a picture. I never hung anything else. I just I bought a first place, or it was blank. And I go, what? And I was just like self-thinking, like, this isn't home. I'm here for a job.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing. Don't get comfortable, because once you're comfortable, that's when they're going to overtake you. So, and I never really thought about it until years after the fact. It's like, you know what? This is my job. I'm here to, get this done.
Dude, that's awesome. That's a great mentality, huh? Now,
pretty boring place to live in, though.
Yeah. Didn't matter.
You're not there to live. You're there to work.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the work, because I'm interested to know what kind of the training routine's like. Are you guys lifting weights? Is it more running? Like what's kind of a day in the life of a professional rugby player look like?
Yeah, I mean, just like anything, it's your craft. So, you have to study. So a lot of it is mental. Okay. A lot of it is recovery. A lot of it is, physical. So these off-season, pre-seasons are really important to gain your weight back and your strength and to heal up.
Yeah.
But through technology and, all these sort of things, it's a science now.
Sure.
So I mean, every time you go on a training field, you're wearing a GPS, so they know every step you take. They know how fast you're going. They know when you're resting, when you're not resting. They know your heart rate.
The analytics are insane.
So there's no hiding now.
Yeah.
And, before it was, you're a stopwatch or this, okay, how are you feeling? Kind of this. No, they'll tell you how you're feeling. You can't lie. You're like, geez, I'm a machine. And I signed myself up. So that's how crazy it is now. And I've had some great partners throughout my career of how I can get that extra edge. And I mean, I've worked, years ago, well above like GPS and heart rate monitor before it was introduced with sport.
Okay.
Sleeping, I take sleep so serious.
Yeah.
I have these, my sleep score. Okay. What is it going to be?
Mm-hmm.
I know how I'm going to feel when I wake up in the morning, but I bet I was around like 87. This is what I look always pretty close to.
Wow.
So, you have to, take your nutrition, and all that. It's you're human though. So you have to think like, where am I going to blow steam off? How am I going to have fun?
Yeah.
I like cold beer. I like friends.
Yeah.
I can't be this like robot. So you have to find the times and that is difficult for a lot of athletes. I was lucky enough to, kind of make sure I have that right balance.
Yeah.
Which is challenging, but you get to it.
Now, did you ever have to deal with any injuries?
Yeah, I mean, playing, 15 years, full-time rugby, you're going to come. I mean, most of my fingers have been broken.
Okay.
A lot of them aren't straight. So like that's not
oh,
straight.
Damn. Yeah, that one's gnarly.
One's not straight. Okay. A couple of thumbs and
some angles there.
Yeah, a couple of little quick ops and shoulder recon and a couple of head knocks.
Okay.
But, it's all part of it. And, whenever you're kind of all these sort of, bends and things like that, I could have gotten them fixed and I would have been fine, but you have a choice. It's like, do I want to play this next week's or do I want to get this fixed?
Just a finger,
miss out.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. I got 9 others. Now I got 8 others. Now I got 7. So just like, oh shit, I better make better life decisions. But yeah, I mean, you're always up against it, but going back to your trainings and everything else and preparing for off seasons, a lot of that work, helps, of, injury prevention.
Yeah, totally.
Making sure that you have the right padding and muscle mass and doing
flexibility's on point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And then, drills of putting yourself in situations where, you can contest, but also you're not going to, put yourself in too much danger.
Yeah.
You mentioned a minute ago, speak to the unique camaraderie of rugby, going out with the other team afterwards. And just in general, I feel like the rugby team always go out and drink beer afterwards. It's a pretty unique camaraderie in rugby.
Yeah, I don't think any other sport is like it. And it starts young. It starts when, little kids play, eating pizza and having sodas after games.
Yeah.
And you kind of get to know it, which is really cool.
And just to be clear, you're talking about the opponent, right? Like you go out with the opponent.
Yeah. So afterwards, you always want to have, a presentation, get together, break bread and have something, frosty to drink.
Yeah.
If it's a soda, if it's a milk, or if it's something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just part of the rugby culture, which is fantastic, and you want to implement that because you want to learn from people, and from my first tours, in the UK, on my first rugby tour, when I was in high school, it was like we got billeted. We didn't have money to stay in hotels, so you actually stay with the other team. So you stay with somebody that you're going to play with the next day.
Yeah,
and
wow.
it was really, really cool to see how they live and see what they eat for breakfast and see their game day operation. So it was, between getting billeted to staying in hostels to experience your first, pubs, and when you're in high school, you're like, wow, this is something I can get behind. And, and I'm friends with people that I've hosted or stayed with, 20 odd years ago. And it's just such a cool, like, environment to put yourself in.
That's the international part of it too, of being hosted, like having noodles for breakfast, or just you're getting that international culture along with the culture of the team and the player, how they train and all that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's been there's definitely been some nutritional challenges, some more than others. I mean, I'll dive in deep. I'm fine being uncomfortable, but whenever you rock up to first week in Japan, and you're up in Hokkaido, preseason camp, and all right, breakfast ready. It's fish heads and rice and a couple lettuce things, right?
Wait, I gotta eat this head here.
I need some Wheaties, man.
Yeah,
but it's all part of it.
Extraordinary.
Wow, I did not know that about rugby, that you guys, like, it's tradition to meet up after the match. And
you always want to have no matter what level of it, and it changes. And once rugby's gone professional and do everything else, maybe they lost their lost their way a little bit. But going back, it's, some of my closest friends are the people I've played against. Like I told you before, his name was actually George Smith, and who I looked up to, played against. We actually got to go afterwards. Had a beer, afterwards. Had a bite to eat, and he's like, "What are you doing?" All right, I'll show you around my town. And then the next year, because I was in Johannesburg in South Africa, next year whenever we played in Australia, he took me out, and it was we were live midweek. All right, let's grab a coffee. Let's do this, and it's just that respect that you have, and friendship that you go and it's just that bond.
So then, how do you switch that when you're back on the pitch and you're going to war against him?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, the mental side of things. And anytime there's a white line I cross it, I'm a different person. So
okay,
you're not my friend.
right, yeah. Dang, dude. Phenomenal.
So popularity of rugby in the U.S. increasing, growing. What's it like?
It's exciting times for rugby, which is really cool for me to be in, and one of the reasons why I started the foundation is to really unite and support what's coming. 2031. USA is hosting the Rugby World Cup here in America. 2033, we're hosting the Women's Rugby World Cup. So it's really exciting. So now it's like all hands on deck. How can we, get into inner city programs? How can we get into the YMCAs, the Boys and Girls Clubs, high schools, making sure that there's a pathway to it. So it's a task. It's a daunting task up against it, and working with cities, schools, colleges, all the groups I mentioned before, of how can we grow the sport, because in my opinion, it is the best sport in the world because of what we've all talked about, and just the inclusion of it. It's from anything. You look at body types, there's a position for everyone, and mental ability, of physical ability, there's always a type for it. Like, if you don't like the tackle, there's touch rugby. If you don't want to there's flag rugby, there's co-ed rugby, there's girls rugby, there's boys rugby. I mean, you go down the list, it's the inclusion. I mean, there's gay rugby, they have tournaments for like gay rugby. I mean, how cool is that? So to be a supporter of across the board, of being like, wow, I'm part of the Rugby Nation. I'm part of this to, really support that and highlight the inclusion, diversity of the sport, and the upward trend of growing in youth rugby, and keeping it safe and making sure that it's a safe environment for coaches, for players, for somebody to seek mentorship and mental aspects of your life going forward.
So what are some of the like roadblocks here in the U.S. or setback, or like, it's like you said, seems like an enormous effort needs to be put in to really expand the sport to where you're dreaming it could be in the U.S. What are, when you're approaching these cities or the districts or the schools, what kind of things are you going up against, of why they don't want to do it, or
I mean, of various things. I mean, you throw a dart, let's throw one at universities. Okay, then they're going to be like, well, it can't be NCAA sport because of Title IX. So, okay, well, how can we get it in? Oh, we need more female athletes. Awesome, let's get females scholarships,
Okay,
NCAA.
yeah.
Let's focus on females that way for that pathway.
Yeah.
100% okay with that. And then the men could follow after that. Then you throw another dart and say, the city, and then, sort of the government, try to get the government to do that, with Parks and Rec and directors. And, you want something to change. You want to stir the pot. Man, I've been in so many of those meetings and just being like, you know what, like money's not the issue. We can put posts up. We can put fields up. Are you guys okay with this?
Yeah.
You're gonna sign off on it? No, you're gonna sign off on it. So getting things done is challenge on that way. But we have made a lot of headway, which is exciting because through our clinics and through our camps and through leagues and through our Jersey grant process that we've done and balls and everything else, we see the needle moving, which is exciting, and it is moving. But you think 2031, 2033, it's a long runway, but it's not long whenever
you got to be on it to that
on the
date.
boots on the ground. So working with different organizations like Major League Rugby and the cities that they're in, or hosting cities that are going to be hosting the Rugby World Cup. Like I said before, it's the third largest sporting event in the world. I mean, the revenue that is going to come in through taxpayers, through airports, through hotels, through rent-a-cars, through travels, everything else, there's going to be a need and want across the board. Now it's about, okay, this is what we're doing. World Rugby understands how much money it is going to get from broadcasting, from ticket sales to hands-on things. So it's there's a lot of moving parts, and it goes up to the billions of dollars. And how do you spend that billions of dollars? Do you spend it afterwards, or do you spend it before? Right. So we're working on getting some of that before, so we can actually pay for safe environments, so it's safe for the fields. It's rugby's, we're pretty simple people. You can use a soccer goal and duct tape some PVC pipe. You're like, we got a rugby field. It's like not quite. And through the foundation, we've donated a lot of these portable rugby posts as well. And I mean, but they're for kids. They're not for grown women or grown men, because it's probably just not the most safe. There's hazardous things. So working with the Parks and Rec and making sure and highlighting, this isn't a football field, this isn't a soccer field, this isn't a rugby field, this is a multi-use sport field. And this is what you're all going to get out of it, and this is the beneficial. And working with it just in the past couple years, our rapport with the cities have been amazing, because every time we leave a field, they say, did you guys come? I was like, yeah. They're like, it's clean. It's cleaner than we left. And that's what we hang our hat on.
That's awesome.
Of being sort of, part of that culture. It's like, you don't leave a piece of tape that was on your ankle. You don't leave an empty water bottle. Right. You make sure. So, you make sure the place is cleaned up. We have a thing, and it goes all the way to professional international rugby. Whenever you're in a locker room, you won't know that they played in the locker, because we sweep the sheds. And you don't have that in any other sport. No. So it's awesome. But you teach them at a young age in the community parks and everything else. So we are getting those wins, but there are challenges, and it is going to take time.
Yeah. Well, 20 years ago, it would have been laughable to have the Rugby World Cup in the state. When you first got on the international stage, you said they would have laughed at you.
Yeah, I mean, it rewinded even more. You kind of compare it to like the 1994 when the Soccer World Cup came to it, and that really kicked off the MLS, and it really kicked off the interest of it, and the growth of those leagues and teams and cities and pathways and academies. I mean, it trickles down to communities, and they do a great job. From LA Galaxy up to all of Southern California. New Miami team with David Beckham building. Austin that just built a new stadium. So now these franchises are worth close to $500 million. 15, 20 years ago, they're $50 million. So it is amazing to see that, and hopefully rugby, and we are on that path of building. But there's got to be a standard, and standard is playing safe, making sure that it's enjoyable for the fan, making sure that it's respectful for the player and player welfare, and making sure the image is not tarnished in any way. Because I think if we stick to our core values of the sport, it can actually grow some real good legs and have something to be proud of. Even if you're not even part of the sport, you can be part of it. Like, it's coming to my city because this is it.
Yeah. Well, curious about, like, because a lot of it, you got to kind of start young. You got to get introduced to the sport. I don't know what the ideal age is, but are you seeing out there with the communities you go to, the people you talk to, you know, I'm sure parents aren't super educated about what rugby is or what, but they maybe are leaning towards it more than football, because there's so much going on with football right now about head injuries and CTE and all this stuff. And, you know, like Pop Warner, I don't know what the stats are, but I heard that it has had a massive decline in the last several years just due to everything that's been coming out with head injuries. So is this an advantage to you guys, or, you know, is it a safer route? Is that something that parents are kind of saying that you're hearing?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of look at, like, why do you want your kids to play sports? You know, to give them, like, social, you know, skills. You want to give them teamwork, give them tools to succeed, give them to be a part of something bigger than they are, continue their education with scholarships. So, I mean, it's kind of hard if you have a really good athletic kid. If I have my boy that's really athletic, he's like, I want to play football. I'm like, no. He's like, well, I get a free ride to UCLA or USC, and then I have opportunity to you know, graduate from school in one of those schools or go to NFL and make that kind of money. Like, how can you say no? So, I mean, that's one of the most powerful organizations, the National Football League, you know, to that.
Right.
And then when you dissect it back and start peeling back of, like, how are they making it safer? Shit, they're really not. It's a dangerous sport. It's a collision sport. That's a battering ram, and they're using, you know, your pads as utensils to hurt, like as weapons to hurt somebody and yourself. So you see some of these teams adopting the rugby tackle. You know, Pete Carroll and a couple other, you know, NFL teams have adopted that, and they are teaching the rugby tackle, and it's cool to see, but it's like, you know, it's still, you know, not really happening. And you talk about, like, what age group do you have to you know, start? I mean, I started when I was 14, 15 years old playing rugby, and ended up playing at the highest level overseas against people that was their first ball that they ever touched, sort of thing. So, you know, you can start, you know, at a teenage, and in our pathway, we have under 8s now, we have under 10s, under 12s, you know, teaching them the skills and everything. But we just have to make sure that we, you know, continue having worth as a sport, making sure it's a safe, having good, you know, skills and the future of it, and educate the parents more so, even the kids, of being like, hey, this is actually Olympic sport. They can be Olympian. You know, once we can kind of get in the NCAA, there it is. There is professional rugby. Yeah, it's a fraction of the money that you could earn in anything else, but the skill sets and what kind of person, you know, boy or girl, you can turn into, man and woman, at the end of it could be, you know, lifelong, you know, for that. I mean, I know my body, you know, playing for so long, I didn't chase that last contract. I actually got my contract out early because I knew, I was like, oh, my body's getting pretty beat up. I was like, you know what? I want to enjoy the rest of my life. I want to surf. I want to hike. I want to, you know, this. I've played with a lot of guys that played a little bit too long, where, you know, it's, you know, takes taxing, and I think, you know, NFL is even worse on that. Sure. Rugby actually gave me that transition to, you know, okay, how can, you know, there be assistance of it? So those are the big differences.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about the kind of financial, which looking at the future here in the U.S. with the World Cup coming, I mean, that's going to exponentially get a better and better opportunity, right?
You'd hope so.
After the World Cup, probably.
Yeah. So you're looking at a timeline, but you know, that goes into sort of ownerships of our professional league or semi-professional league with MLR, Major League Rugby. They have you know, 12 teams in there in some pretty good cities, but they're capped off of the earnings that each of those players can make. So, you know, obviously that's capped off by the owners that don't want to pay too much. And, you know, if it's player driven, or if it's player awareness, or if it's a association that needs to help them out, then they need to go that way.
Yeah. You mentioned core values of rugby a few minutes ago. So is there clear defined core values of the sport? Like, Yeah, what are they?
Yeah, I mean, there are. I mean, you want to take us away with the core values?
I was going to read the core values that you have for the Todd Clever Foundation. Are those the same as
you know what?
effectively?
Those are I think there's a lot of crossover. So if you want to go ahead and
so
read.
the Todd Clever Foundation core values are passion, teamwork, enjoyment, respect, and sportsmanship. And there's just enormous synergy here with our own core values, and obviously it's something that's important to us, so that was something that really stuck out to us. But I imagine those intersect with the core values of rugby or playing to each other.
There is a lot of crossover, and that is great with World Rugby or the RFU in England or SANZAR in Southern Hemisphere or USA Rugby. I don't know how specifically they stand on those values, but those speak to me, and those what I teach the kids in clinics. Yeah. I focus on that just as much as I focus on them passing and catching the ball.
Yeah.
And once I kind of do that, and then I start working with other businesses and corporate gigs, it's like these core values aren't for the line, for the pitch.
Right.
These are for your life.
Yeah.
These are actually, forming great women, great men to take on. And it's not limited in any capacity.
It's fantastic.
Can you speak to each of them just a little bit? When the one that sticks to sportsmanship, I just think is such a critical one, but no more than any of the others. Can you speak just a little bit more?
Yeah, with sportsmanship, it's funny. I always want to evolve. I always want to get better. And I actually made calls. I was like, and you might think it's crazy, and people might do it because is it? And I made calls. And I said, can I say sportsmanship? And they're like, yeah, of course, why not? I was like, what about sportspersonship? Like, am I gonna get upset anyway? How can I always be politically correct, always engaging, helping out? So I actually went to people on all ways, and I said, is this offensive anyway? Because I don't want to be. I always want to be that leader and evolve and make sure that we're continuing the trend of being better, because I know that we weren't the best in our past, and we're always trying to get better. So that's one of them. So I can proudly say I didn't get any response back of sportsmanship and just kind of what that entails and what you learn from little league baseball or soccer, eating orange slices, or all these sort of things of being a good teammate, being a good opponent, being respectful for the referee or the other team, so
for the game itself too.
Exactly for who came before you. And that's one of my initiatives that I have, and I'm working closely on, is it's about leaving the field in a better place than you found it, but leaving a jersey better than when you got it.
Nice.
So I received this jersey, I'm going to leave this because I don't own this jersey. I don't own this number. I'm just borrowing it. I'm trying to put this in a better place than when I received it. And that was my whole goal, playing on the USA team for 15 years. Can I leave this jersey in a better place?
Yeah.
Putting my heart and soul, having that respect, that sportsmanship, that leadership that guided me through.
Dude, awesome.
Badass, man. Touch on passion.
Was that not passion enough for you?
I'm just listing them off. You got passion, teamwork, enjoyment, respect. I think you definitely.
Yeah, I mean, and that's
respect for all those pieces.
And that's the best thing. The enjoyment, like it's so funny because my rugby career went in a complete circle. I got into it for the right reasons, because I wanted to enjoy, I wanted to see the world, I wanted to make friendships, I wanted to do everything else. Then I was like, oh, I actually become a professional. Oh my gosh, I can actually represent our country.
Yeah.
I can actually, captain our country at the world's, biggest sporting event at the World Cup in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, do pretty good with contracts overseas. And then when I retired, I went back straight into it, played old boys, classics, went to, South Africa, Bermuda, Aspen, all these sort of things that you just kind of, you have a beer the night before, you're with them and you play, and have a beer at halftime or after the game, and you're just having full-on enjoyment and supporting the deed of it. And there isn't a lifespan of a rugby player, maybe on a high performance side, or if you want to be Olympian, but like it goes back to being inclusive and being, there is a spot for everyone. I mean, I play against like 50-year-olds, and I'm not going to go out and smash somebody, I'm just I respect him so much. I want him to enjoy it as much as I am. Yeah.
Dude, the age-old question is, what's tougher, football or rugby? I don't know why.
The debate in junior high.
The whole thing,
for sure. Yes. There was always a kid who was like, no, rugby's way tougher.
Exactly. But, I don't know. The picture you're painting here, just of how much more of what rugby is about, what it entails, and the lifestyle that it is, one just gets me fired up to get like more into rugby, but two, like we haven't really talked about the toughness of the actual gameplay. We know you got to be tough to play rugby, but is that a question that gets like the international folks also compare football and rugby, or is that just an American thing?
No, everywhere I've gone overseas, everybody is intrigued in America. Wanting something to do with America. I want to move over to this. Like, there's no money here. Like some of the best players in the world and my teammates and everything else. I want to come to America. I want to go to New York, or I want to go to LA. Does Vegas have a team? I'm like, what are you talking about? There's no money here. Like, you think that is, but people are very, America's very capped. And people really want to be like, the bright lights, and if you can make it in America, you can make it anywhere sort of thing. And it is true, because we're an untapped market, and when you in the professional sporting era of rugby, so there is no ceiling. We talked about the history and these other developed countries, rugby nation countries, is they've been professional since the early 90s, mid 90s, and they're having issues with broadcasting, or there's only 4 million people in the country, or so you really can't make a make a big splash on it,
right?
So like, once it catches, and that's what it is, like once it catches on in America, it's going to be wildfire, and the rest of the world's in trouble.
Yeah, definitely. Where do we stand as far as, our talent? Because it's, just looking at all the other sports, and when you look at basketball compared to some of basketball in the other world, and obviously there's no football anywhere else in the world, but I think it's some of the athletes in the NFL are arguably probably some of the greatest athletes in the world. Like, we have incredible freaking talent. And when those guys start coming over to rugby, like, is America going to be a massive force or what?
Yeah, earlier kind of talked about the youth and sort of how you get into it.
Yeah.
And that's one cool thing about rugby, is the pathway of getting into the national team, the Olympic team, or the World Cup team for 15s, is there isn't like a linear, like you don't have to like go to this university, or you don't have to make this age grade team, so we have that pathway, but we also have crossover athletes.
Right.
So those crossover athletes are doing an amazing job with the sevens team, with the Olympic USA sevens team. So that's really cool, seeing people that have only played the sport for 2 years that kind of don't know what they're doing out there, but their athletic ability is just absolutely insane. And they're just world beaters. They're just beating these like household names in New Zealand and South Africa, and you're just like, wait, what? He's only been playing for a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. There's a small percentage that can do that, because it's so much more mental taxing and learning than it is football. Like American football, it's a coach's game. They're playing chess, and the chess pieces are the players. Right. They don't give a shit about like this person, or they're sacrificing, and that's what they do. And they don't think, these athletes don't think for themselves. They don't. They run this route, and they do what they told. In rugby, you have a game plan, and it's like, all right, these are the options that could happen, and you're carrying the ball, you're tackling, you're running these lines, you're teaming up. So you're thinking on the fly, and there is no stoppages. So the coach isn't making a play; it's all leadership on the field.
Yeah, makes sense. It's really hard to compare them in that sense. Like, you just can't. Totally different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that. I love that.
Just giving us a way
deeper understanding of the sport,
honestly, and what it means and the culture behind it and the respect behind it, the camaraderie and the sportsmanship tradition is really just exceptional. And you can see how the values of rugby aren't really about rugby. They're about building good men and women, and there might not be a linear path for the rugby, but going on the rugby path is a pretty linear path to being a good person.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. That's really good.
Having not played myself, but just spending an hour with you, man. And I think you're a fine ambassador to the sport, both globally and here in the United States. And it makes me pumped to see the growth of rugby and what's going to happen and what it can become here in the United States, and how that can make us a better country.
You know, we're always trying to get better, and you know, we bear the mistakes or the learnings, the losses, and you know, turn it in not into wins and losses, about learnings, and you want to be better, and you want your kids to be better than us. You want them to be better than us, and that just needs to build traction of it. And I think you said it, you know, correctly, and. No, it's a cool environment and space that I'm in, of being able to do something that I'm really passionate about, you know, grow the sport that gave me so much, and to give back and to see, but probably my favorite sight, you know, looking back is watching, a crossover, you know, American football player, you know, that's been on the line, you know, offensive, defensive line, and all they do is block, or all they do is like this. They might have touched the ball one time on a recovery or something. And you get them to play rugby, and this big body just touches the ball. Their smile is as big as their eyes.
So jacked.
They're just like, oh, you're like, yeah, bro, that's your like, job. Run. They're like, it changes their life. It's like, you could be doing this, you know, and it's like, and they're part of it. And that lineman, you know, or the prop or whatever position is just as important as the fast guy on the outside. So there's such, and each of them have the same opportunity to score that winning try. Make that game-winning tackle. So everybody's just as important as the other with rugby. And but that is my favorite sight whenever I see, you know, a crossover lineman in football, and they tell me afterwards, I touched the ball one time in my career. 14 years. That was a fumble recovery. That was a highlight. I touched it. I'm like, man, you touch it like 20 times a game now. So they get stoked.
It's so great. I mean, I played soccer growing up, and just the way you kind of described how the game works, and without being stopped, like there's a lot of same kind of communication that's happening on the field. The leader is really critical for what everybody else is going on. The coach, you don't even hear. Like you really don't even hear the coach during the game. So that it does make a lot of sense. And but one thing, thank you for just getting us so hyped on rugby, because I want to really get into it more, and especially with the next Olympics, like really actually watch everything go down and, you know, dive into it and get stoked for the USA. But also just like where you're at, your position, and what the actual kind of trajectory could be for the sport in America. I mean, you have 30 years of work ahead of you that, like, it's awesome, dude. You're really set on this mission, and there's no limit. You don't have to stop ever now. And you have all the accolades of, hey, I've been there, done that. But now the expansion in the U.S. and everything, like, dude, so pumped for you and what you have in store for the future.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of long days, long hours, rainy fields, and you know, traveling and trying to win, you know, one person at a time. Yeah. So it's we're up against it, but that's why you know, I raised my hand, because I believe in the sport, and I've seen what it's done, and changes lives, and it's really cool to be part of.
Dude, it's phenomenal.
Dude, you got us ready to punch it into the try zone.
We need to do a practice, like learn something.
For sure, man.
Okay, before we cap this off, I got to ask about the ESPN body shoot, because, you know, I've seen those over however many years they've been doing them. Like, what is the shoot actually like? You know, are you just walking around naked, or they're like, all right, you're going to do this pose, we're pulling your thing off, and ready? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, so, I mean, it was, I got asked to be in it. You know, all right, sign this, you know, NDA. You can't, you know, let the word out. You're going to be part of this.
Okay.
So I had, I think, like almost 3 weeks to get ready for the shoot, and I'm also getting ready for the rugby season. With USA. So I mean, I was already in good shape, but I'm like, all right, let me cut back the carbs a little bit. Let me just do a couple extra sit-ups. And so I wasn't too nervous. I was like, oh, this is what we're kind of seeing. We want to do it on the field, and we get these permits for this. And I'm just like, I'd rather do it in at the beach in front of my house. Let's do this. Like, okay, where are you at? Okay, we can get a small permit. I was like, no, it should be fine.
Just walk out there.
It's a private beach. We're good. And so I wasn't nervous. I was like, okay, we're good. We'll catch. And then it was the night before the shoot. They're like, yeah, we'll send over the call, the sheet and everything else. And I was CC'd on with 23 other people. I was like, wait, I thought it was just going to be like a lighting, a camera person, and a director.
5 people.
3 people. Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, that's quite cool. All right. Yeah. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, so you have the assistant of this, the food runner. We have this going on. I'm just like, oh man, this is actually a big production.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, this little beach, private beach we had to have this big trucks out. And I'm just like, oh no, Shit, now I'm getting nervous. So I'm just like, oh, jeez, okay. All right, I'll try to fall asleep, get some sleep. My sleep score wasn't too good that night. A little bit nervous. So I show up, wake up, open them in, and we just do it. But it was, there was a good 20 people, just like all eyes on deck,
Yeah.
All eyes on deck,
So you are fully naked.
Oh yeah.
Give you little skin looking underwear.
Nothing. And there's we see you dive, and we see you score tries, and you always dive. We don't want to get, so they brought down this trampoline and a pad and everything else. So we're gonna shoot this way. So can you get the angle of this?
Yeah, we got your dick in that one. You gotta get the arm out though. You need to block it.
So I'm sweet. All right. So I did. So I started running to jump off it, scoring the try. And they're like, okay, hold on. About 5 of them. You see the camera here? You keep on showing us this. You need this. I was like, oh, don't get those linked out. And I go, just aim the other way so we don't see anything. I said, all right. So, so don't dig too deep in the internet, because I'm sure those are floating around
out there somewhere.
But yeah, I mean, I had the oil girl to oil me up. I had, everything going. It was a big day.
What an experience. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So hundreds of takes of different stuff.
Oh yeah, maybe even thousands. I was not very smart about covering up.
Do it again.
Yes.
So you get in a point during the day where you're like, yeah, no, I don't need the rope. We're done with ropes.
Oh no, I mean, that's one of my prized possessions. I still have it at home. Put it on. My wife is like, oh, come on, Todd. I'm like, what do you mean?
Oh, that's great, dude. That's great. Well, you got anything else, El Rubio?
How can our listeners support the Todd Clever Foundation and or follow your journey? Link up. What are your links? Your site?
Yeah, I mean, Todd Clever Foundation, pretty simple. We're trying to impact the communities through sport, which is exciting. So, I mean, check us out, like us, share, connect me with somebody that you think that could be a good thing.
Yeah.
We're doing a fundraiser around the Los Angeles Sevens, which will be February 24th, 25th, 26th at the Carson Stadium, at LA Galaxy Stadium.
Cool.
So we're doing a fundraising at Top Golf, which will be a lot of fun, and giveaways, drinking, get the weekend started off right.
There we go.
I mean, it's just really cool, and selfishly to be able to enjoy something that you're passionate and get people that have had my back. And once starting the foundation, the community and old teammates and my old coaches and everybody else is like, this is get behind you, and you're doing something good and impactful, which is great. So yeah, just follow along the ride and watch rugby grow, and if connections are the biggest thing, friendships and business and everything else. Try not to ask anybody for monetary sort of things. But obviously we need it going, but I think there can be so many more mutual beneficial things where, from corporate sides wanting to get into communities and giving jerseys and getting, news things or getting balls into kids' hands. We do all that. So it's, we kind of play that middleman and making sure that, the next ball, it could be a rugby ball for the next boy or girl.
So it's toddclever.com. And what if a parent wants to get their kids interested or learn a little bit more? Is there youth rugby? How could some parents kind of explore further if they're interested?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great thing and a great question, is because youth rugby is growing, and there's a lot of good parents, a lot of good coaches trying to build their programs, and it starts with touch rugby, so it's not contact, flag rugby, learning the games and learning the teamwork and the rugby values, and then it goes into middle school and high school where it's you can go into tackle, so it's there's rugby across the board, across the nation, and there's hot pockets where it is, and we're there to help as well, set up. So we do some grants of writing and making sure that if you're starting a team, we make sure you have some jerseys, and you have balls, and you have cones and all that, and connect you through the right resources with USA Rugby and getting sanctioned and being part of the whole rugby family, that rugby nation of it.
Awesome, man.
Hell yeah. So go check out your local rugby scene.
Yes.
Get involved.
And I know you have some familiarity here, lastly, but just over 1 year from now, we will attempt to break the Guinness World Records title for the most hair donated to charity in the history of mankind. We're going to need every mane possible on deck. Can we interest you in participating, whether it's cutting and donating your hair or just being part of the Great Cut family, to being involved in the Great Cut 2024?
The Great Cut. I think I might. I think
Dude.
I don't have enough, right?
Yeah.
Mahogany.
Epic, dude.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little salty. It's a little, from the water.
From the mighty Pacific
vibe,
Ocean.
bro.
That's
Yeah.
it. That's the product I use. So if somebody wants this, we can talk. So a year from now, the Great Cut.
Yeah.
You have my support.
Awesome.
Maybe even my hair. We'll see.
We'll see. Hey, you don't need to make that, call now. You could just come to the event and
There we
feel it
go.
out. And if you feel so compelled, you could donate.
I like it.
Just warm up to the idea. We'll keep you closely posted.
Todd, you're a legend, man. We appreciate the hell out of you. Thank you so much, dude. And let's get out on Torrey Pines, because after the farmers are open, the rough is looking thick, and we need to get out in it.
Let's get it around on the books.
Let's make it happen. Thanks
Great
for
hanging, man.
Yeah,
Thanks
thanks
for
for
joining.
having me. This is unreal. I love what you guys do. You guys are a good cause, and there's a lot of good synergies that we run together. So good
Definitely,
people.
brother.
Love it.
No doubt. Well, until next time, boys, keep letting it ride.
Suit.